Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight we have more stories from Southern Illinois. This time we're going to be in Murphysboro, Illinois, where there was police reports from 1973 about an unknown creature that terrified that town for 10 days. We also have a couple of stories from Southern Illinois of frightening encounters. That's next. Okay, tonight we are in the RBM inflatable tent, which is also a hot tent. I got the stove going. It's really warm in here, very comfortable. And for tonight's beer, we have from the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, Old Chico. Check that out. There it is. And Old Chico is referencing a brewery from Chico, California from 1865 to 1899, and this is called a Crystal Wheat. It's really a pretty good beer. I had one of these before, and I'm just going to take it straight out of the bottle. Let me give you a shot of that again. There we go. Old Chico. Wow, that is very flavorful. It's got a real smooth finish. It's just a slight bitterness, and it drops off really quickly, and it almost has kind of a champagne taste to it. But it's a wheat beer, kind of a light beer, really. Old Chico Crystal Wheat, Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, out of Chico, California. Cheers. Illinois is known for being number 4 on the list of reports about Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Documented reports. It is behind Washington, California, Florida, and Illinois, in that order. Southern Illinois is really interesting. It's a very long state in the Midwest, and it goes down into adjacent to Kentucky, Indiana, and over on the west you have Missouri and Iowa. And then in southern Illinois you have bluff country, thick forest, rivers, and the Shawnee National Forest. Now north of the Shawnee National Forest is Murphysboro. And in 1973, over a 10-day period, there was several reports about an unknown creature that was sighted in and around the town of Murphysboro around the Muddy River. The first report happened June 25th, 1973. There was a couple in their car in a parking lot down by Riverside Park, which was adjacent to the Big Muddy River, and they were parked near the boat launch. There was no one else in this parking lot. Now, I went to Google Maps, interesting, and I was able to street view and go into this parking lot and see about where they were parked, and also see around this Riverside Park. It was shortly after midnight. Teen couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, in the car. It's June. They got the windows down. There's a little bit of moonlight. Got the radio playing. They're talking, enjoying each other's company. And they hear down by the river, in the forest, this inhumane, loud, shrill scream. Right in front of them, a little bit to the left. They look at each other. They look back out the front windshield. And they're not sure what to think. They're thinking there's a wild animal. They don't know what it is. They can't identify it. They keep looking, listening. And then they see this large upright being covered in hair, about 7 feet tall. And they said in the report he was cream colored, almost white, but dirty and covered in mud on his extremities, his hands and his legs. But man-like. It was walking out of the forest across the grass towards their car. The police report said the creature was proceeding towards the car while it was continuing to scream. The boyfriend quickly starts the car, grabs the stick, and he puts it in reverse, and he's backing up, and they both look, and they can see the creature is coming straight for the vehicle. I don't know how many feet away it was, but they could see it, and then they put it in drive, and he drove away. It did not chase them. The screaming faded out. They went immediately to the Murphysboro Police Department, MPD. They quickly went inside. They were stressed, anxious, and frightened. They had no idea what they had seen. Talked to the police officers. They started to work with one of the police officers to fill out a report. And I found these reports. There were several of them, of all the incidences over this 10-day period. And they had these like photocopied reports, and they would put them in the typewriter and put the information in about the incident or complaint, and where it had that box that said incident or complaint, it said sighting of unknown creature. That's all they could think of to describe it for this little box in this police report. Right about that time, they dispatched 2 police officers to the Riverside Park. They pull up into the spot right about where the couple was, where they told them they were at, and they got the flashlights out. They had their sidearms. They were a little concerned. They weren't sure what to expect. They walked down to the boat launch. The river's right there, Big Muddy River. This is well after midnight at this point. They got the flashlights, they're shining around the forest, and they found this muddy area near the river, and they found footprints in the mud, human-like footprints, pretty good size. They were all over the place, and then they kind of tracked them, followed this set away, and they saw that the stride was about 5 or 6 feet between footprints. This was in the police report. They did not find anything other than that and the police report that this couple had made. The second report to the MPD happened that same day, June 26th, 1973. The first report was the 25th into the 26th. This one was that following evening, just before sundown. There was a couple, another couple, and the mom was in the house, and they were on 37 Westwood Lane in Murphysboro. I looked this up. It's an actual house right there. And what's interesting is there's this thick forest behind this large backyard, and it goes down a hill because I put it on terrain view in the Google Maps, and there was also a pond, and then down from the pond was the Big Muddy River, and then just upriver was the Riverside Park where the first encounter happened, the first report. Really interesting. Just you do a little map homework, you can kind of tie things together. This couple was sitting on this patio in the backyard of this 37 Westwood Lane, and they were talking. Sun was going down, but they could still see. It wasn't dark yet. It was dusk, and it was going to be dark soon. And they saw come out of the forest in this, at the end of this large backyard, there was a field and then this forest, and they saw this large shape, human-like shape, come out of the forest, 7 to 8 feet tall, and it quickly walked into the field, turned around, looked at them, and then walked back and was standing in front of the forest. And the couple, again, they're like, not sure what this is. And the guy gets up and he walks out towards it. And then the report said he was within 30 or 40 feet of this creature. Again, it was about 7+ feet tall, whitish cream color, kind of muddy looking, and upright on 2 feet. Boyfriend comes back. He says, let's get inside. Something's not right. And they go inside. And they tell the mom, who was in the house. She calls the police, and within a few minutes, some time, the police show up. And she said it was outside. This large being was standing there in the field, and because they had told the mom, and the mom was telling them, and the teenagers were telling them as well. And so they went to investigate. They looked out by the trees and they saw some grass, tall grass that was flattened down, and they saw this kind of a trail through the woods, almost like a game trail. And they followed it a ways. It was starting to get dark, and one of them thought, let's go get the German Shepherd, the police dog, and help with this, because it looks like we're going to have to go in here and see what is going on and follow this down the slope here towards the pond. They come back a little bit later with this German Shepherd who was trained to track, search buildings, and to attack if need be. The police officer has the dog on the leash, and the dog quickly moves down this path, down this embankment, and they're following the dog's scent, and he's smelling something, and then every so often it stops to smell this tall grass, and there's this slime on this tall grass. Right after that, the dog is hesitant to continue on. The police officer checks it and he rubs his fingers together. It was like this unidentified slime, this blackish slime that was on this grass, and this was where the dog was tracking this German Shepherd. They got the dog going again. Dog goes around the pond. There's more slime that they find. They come to this old barn. This is nighttime. There's two police officers. They got the flashlights, the dog, and they come to this barn, and they can smell this horrible stench. The dog did not want to go into this barn. And they said this was very, very unusual for this German Shepherd, because this dog would go after anything at their command. One of the police officers pushed the dog into the barn. The dog quickly turned around and ran back out. Did not want to go in there. Very unusual for this dog. They searched the barn. They did not find anything there, but this is where the tracks led. It was very frightening for the police officers. They didn't know what to expect inside this barn. Maybe it went around the barn. They don't know. But that was what happened on the second report. Now, there were several reports, like I said, over this 10-day period. And then throughout the 70s and into the 80s, there was other reports periodically over time that were associated with the Big Muddy River, and that's how it became known as the Big Muddy Monster, Southern Illinois, Murphysboro. Now, present day, in Murphysboro, they have a large sculpture of the Big Muddy Monster. It appears to be about 7+ feet tall. Really cool. He's much leaner than the Patterson Gimlin footage from Northern California, the Patty. Much leaner, but he's got these long, lanky arms and very muscular looking, human-like face, but he's got a wide nose and hair everywhere. Really crazy looking, really cool sculpture. They also have a couple of murals downtown Murphysboro, as well as they have they just started this in 23, the Big Muddy Monster Festival, where they have a 5K run, activities, food trucks, vendors, and live music as well. Oh, there's also, for Murphysboro, there's the Big Muddy Brewing Company. They have some beer. Unfortunately, I did not get a beer for this episode. That would have been really cool. And they also have a Big Muddy River Monster Brew Fest. Taste beer and have a good time with that. So there's a lot going on in Murphysboro in relation to these encounters and sightings that happened in the 70s and 80s and on through. There's been other things in Southern Illinois. I got another story for you. This next story or report happened in 1973 to Rebecca. She was 23 at the time, and she did not want to talk about this for 40 years. She finally talked about it in 2013, and even then her husband didn't believe her. He believed that she saw something, but he did not believe it was what she thought it was. This happened in the small town of Prairie du Rocher, which is north and west of Murphysboro, not that far away in the adjacent county, and it's along the Mississippi River, and it's very flat through there. And then there's this bluff country just east of Prairie du Rocher. Very rugged country, very forested, very steep, and gullies and ravines, and there's a little road that winds through there. And this is where Rebecca had her 2 horses were at a small farm ranch about 3 miles from her house. And this ranch was about 17 acres, had a big corral for her horse to stay there, and a small house and a barn. And up on this bluff, which is where this country was, she wanted to do some riding and spend the night and get up early the next day and ride her horse. And she thought it'd be really great to just camp there for the night. Her husband was out of town. She brought her German Shepherd. She had 2 horses there. And she was going to camp for the night. She set up her tent. And not too far from her tent, 15, 20 feet, was a sinkhole. And up on this bluff country, there was a series of sinkholes. And apparently southern Illinois, in the bluffs, there's these fairly deep sinkholes in the rock. This particular one was 6-7 feet deep, about 30 yards around, and there was oak, elm, and other hardwood trees growing out of this sinkhole, and they were about 20-25 feet above the surrounding landscape. Really interesting trees growing in sinkholes and going up. And so she was spending the night relaxing, had a campfire going, got out a big old skillet, had her German Shepherd there next to her, and she put on some coffee and she started to make some bacon. Was going to make some sandwiches with it and just enjoying the evening. Loved the outdoors, never had any trouble outside in the wild by herself, in the forest, and she was just enjoying the evening. As the bacon was starting to sizzle and she could smell it, she heard this odd grunt sound coming from the sinkhole, 10 to 12 feet away. Immediately caught her attention. Her dog, which would normally chase deer and chase other animals away, was now just sitting by her side. She heard some movement down in this sinkhole. Something was moving around down there. Her dog began to shake violently. She stood up. She had no weapon. She had a flashlight. The sun was going down. It was getting dark. There was some firelight shining towards the trees, up on the lower part of the trees. And then she heard this high-pitched screech, almost a scream. And she instinctively covered her ears because it was so loud. And she immediately thought, is this a bobcat or a coyote? Maybe it smelled my food. But she tried to rationalize it, but it didn't make any sense. Whatever this was, which was much too loud and strange to be either of these animals. She stood staring at these trees, waiting for what was going to happen next. And then she started to see the trees shaking back and forth violently, like something had grabbed them and was shaking them to try to scare her off. This was accompanied by loud grunting, growls, high and low pitched, and this screaming screech sound. She stood her ground, but she was beginning to feel terrified. There was no wind, just a slight breeze. Then everything fell silent. Nothing was moving with the trees. She heard her 2 horses come out of the barn, and they went over to the edge of the corral. They were now staring at the sinkhole. She could hear them stomp and then snort. And then they took off, galloping back towards the barn as if chased by a predator. She saw this from the corner of her eye while she stared straight ahead at the trees. Rebecca admitted she was fascinated by what was happening, but this overwhelming sense of fear was starting to overtake her. It was dead silent, and then she heard this grunt sound again, and she felt as if she was rooted to the ground and her dog was not moving either. And then the trees started to shake again. But what got to her was how many trees were shaking, and shaking violently. So much so that it boggled her mind. And her brain was trying to process it, and it just seemed impossible what she was seeing. Just how many trees and how violently it was shaking, and then hearing this grunting sound coming from this sinkhole. And then the fear just overtook her. It was unbelievable, the fear that she was feeling. It finally drove her to action. She doused the fire, grabbed the skillet, ran over, threw it into the back of the pickup truck, got the dog into the truck, jumped in, fired it up, and sped down the road. When Rebecca got home, she was so filled with fear that she opened up the cellar door and she threw the skillet down the stairs. She didn't want to deal with it. Her dog was doing okay, but she was traumatized. She had spent years going up there alone, grooming the horses, feeding them, riding them, going into the forest and seeing animals by herself. She never had anything like this happen to her. This incident changed her life so much that she decided to sell her horses, and she had never gone back into the forest or isolated places again. She is now 73 years old. She still remembers that night in detail as if it was yesterday, and whatever she saw and experienced, she did not want to experience ever again, or even know what it was. She didn't want to deal with it. And she remembered details of what happened that night, and the final thing she remembered was that she grabbed the skillet, threw it into the back of the truck while the bacon was still sizzling. And that is our story from Rebecca from Southern Illinois. Wow, that is very frightening. All these stories happened in Southern Illinois. Crazy things happen down there, and there's more incidents that have taken place in Southern Illinois. Thank you for watching. I appreciate the comments and all your support while I do this, and I am going to be getting out doing more camping. I love this tent. It's been great. This is a great tent, and I'm so warm in it, so I'm going to be doing some winter camping in the months ahead. So all right, you guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. As always, keep hiking.